right, so it's a couple minutes after the hours. We can get going. I still see attendees showing up, but we
Right.
can get started here. A few housekeeping notes. Hello, everybody. Just a quick introduction. I'm Jeff Weinman, president of Computer Dimensions. I'll be kind of moderating and participating a little bit in this webinar as we go through. It'll be an interactive webinar for everybody. We do have some specific information that we're going to be sharing, discussing, and going over. We have a lot of questions that people have sent in prior to um, the webinar, so we're going to be addressing some of those questions. If you have more questions during the webinar, use the Q&A, and we will address those questions. If we run out of time at the end of the webinar, we still will address the questions in an email that follows. The webinar is being recorded, so everybody will get a copy of the recording, those that registered for this after the webinar. Everybody is muted too. It's just a webinar-driven presentation, so use the Q&A if you do have any questions or comments. And with that, I guess we'll get going. I'll hand off to Jack for a quick introduction.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us here today. Yeah, absolutely. This is meant to be an interactive session. We're going to be talking about AI in construction, what construction teams need to know about AI and how to actually use it. It's really meant to be almost workshop driven. So we want to get a lot of questions. I want to field those questions live. We're going to be sharing those assets with you after. So again, not only those will be recorded, but we want to take those questions and make sure that you have answers to them, along with any other resources we have, make them very available to you, again, so that everybody can learn from this. And this entire session is meant to be educational. Rowan is going to be taking on the perspective of an expert from a developer side of the tools and an expert in construction on that application. And I'm going to know a little bit about the infrastructure as a IT provider. And let me just speak to who I am, by the way. Let's jump to that slide 2, Jeff, if you have a chance. Oh, and before we do that, a big thank you to the Arizona Builders Alliance for co-hosting this. They're always a partner that does a great job as part of the ABC. And thank you for inviting all of your membership, including myself. Great always working with you guys. But I'm Jack Enfield. I'm the vice president of Computer Dimensions. We're a technology provider here in Arizona, the only really exclusive provider that offers services and software development to the AEC industry. We've been doing this for, God, it goes by fast, about 30 years. I've been pretty much exclusive to construction technology for about 10 years now. I hold a technical seat on the ABA for their advisory board, quite a few other construction affiliations like the ASA. Love the industry, love giving back to it. Have quite a bit of knowledge regarding technology and what you do. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rowan, and I'm just going to give him a quick plug in that I had a chance to meet Rowan at the ABC National Convention, and in a large grouping of people who spoke, I would say that he really resonated with me because he was probably the most concerned with educating builders with what's going on, what's happening. Most people were admittedly selling. They were looking to plug their products and what they could do, and there's a sea of them. And he was one of the only ones that actually really wanted to take the time to explain what's going on and how to really help people make decisions about the slew of AI coming your way. So fantastic resource. We're very happy to have him here. Rowan, with that, I pass it to you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate checking in with everybody on here. And as Jack said, I'm just passionate about helping people adopt technology and the newest technology is AI in the space. So my background, I've spent about 20 years in kind of advanced analytics and strategy type industries across a really broad range, from supply chains to oil mining to now construction. So I was last a partner at the Boston Consulting Group doing AI strategy for Fortune 500 companies. I introduced the first AI at Vail Resorts when the ski industry shut down over COVID. That was super fun. Adidas before that and various other roles before that. But really, I'm super just passionate about figuring out these tools are moving at such a fast pace. And as Jack's saying, I think a lot of folks are speaking from the perspective of their tool. I work for a company. I'm the chief operating officer for Smartbuild Construction Solutions. We have tools. So we're a construction project management technology focused on the mid-sized contractors. So if you're a mid-sized contractor and you're thinking about what project management software you want to use, then give us a call. We'll talk about it. that's the end I'll say about this, my product, right? Like the whole rest of this presentation is going to be about AI and like from first principles, like how to start getting value from it, how to understand elements of it that are important to you. Why is it important? And this is going to be the first of a little bit of a series, right? Like in 1 hour, we simply can't get all the education on AI. I probably consume about 3 to 4 hours of content per day on AI in some way or other. And so like there is so much more than we're going to get off in here, but I'm going to try and impart some of the things I think everyone needs to know, and then we'll try and deal with questions to the best of our ability, both live and then offline. So with that, maybe I'll just jump on and sharing my screen just so that I can jump around and present as I do, but it's all the same stuff. Share. All right. So the place I start with on AI is just, this is a freight train moving at a crazy rate that is transforming what's happening everywhere in the world, right? So some of you, that will be a known fact. All of you will be aware that people are talking about it all the time, but just a few facts that sit behind that, right? So $1.5 trillion was spent on AI in 2025. About 1 in 7 companies in the ABC National Group are contributing to an AI data center build somewhere in the country. Like this is a mega effect that is affecting the construction industry, both directly in terms of building, but also in capability. The other like just craziest stat out there is if you just think about how much more powerful it's gotten in the last year, like it's wildly better than it was a year ago. They have already committed capital to the amount of computing that will 15 to 30x what is happening. So it's unimaginable how much better 30 times better would be. And that's not including anyone doing anything smarter that hasn't been proven. Like these are on existing chips with committed data centers, etc. They might have a little bit of trouble accessing all the power they need for it, but like even if they're wrong here, even if it's 15, like this is a wildly changing space that is going to impact the way that we do things in ways that we can't even get our heads around fully now. And with that, the cost is dropping like crazy as well. In some ways, it's easy to think that the cost is increasing because I'm spending more money on AI than I was 2 years ago. But if you think about the cost of the same task in AI, that is getting cheaper at a rate of about 40x per year. So something that cost $40 last year costs $1 this year, right? I'm just doing 1,000 times as much of it. So I'm spending more on it, but what it's actually doing is vastly more. And everyone started using it. So when I started having these chats kind of a year ago, a lot of people in the room, if we could see everybody's hands, I'd ask you to raise your hand if you were using ChatGPT or any AI products. A lot of people would say no back then. But now I think actually most people are using it, even in the construction industry. The challenge that I run into all the time is that the skill with which people are focused on using it, they're not kind of increasing the muscle on how to use it, which means they're kind of still using it in a reasonably simple way. And there's lots of stages for this. So one of the things I'll try to get across in this session is just a framework to think about how to advance your use of AI. And wherever you're at on that spectrum, there's still somewhere to go. And there's still somewhere for me to go, right? Like I cannot learn at the pace that it's coming out at the moment.
Hey, Rowan, quick question for you here for me. This is, and I know you, as somebody who's blazing the trail out there in industry events, I've noticed just in the last 3 or 4 years alone that when I go to some of these venues, what used to be a very small space occupied by maybe a handful of technology companies, but mostly operational facilities, right, that are pushing it. It was just a handful of vendors, and of those vendors, it was typically something like 360-degree imaging for drones, or it was all BIM, right? Now I go and coming back from like say pre-construction, the entire floor is all technology. So would you agree though that now it really is an absolutely fundamental part of the operation for construction?
Totally. And I think of a quote, which is like, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. So it's like what's already possible is wildly more advanced than anybody on this call, including myself, are doing. It's already possible. It's already proven. The hard bit is like figuring out how to adopt it and get value from it, because it's really hard to learn at the pace that it's changing. I'd even argue that it's impossible to learn at the pace that it's changing. But this is where I think like there's not really an option to not do this. And I found this visual, so I saw this from somebody else, but like, let's see if this is working. Oh, technology doesn't work. But this is like someone with the flash running behind you, right? Like I'm sitting there running along, trying to do things the old way, and someone powered by AI is just going to steam past me before I make it to the finish line. There's no way you can keep up. And if that's not true today, like where you sit on that journey, you don't know, or you might think you're here, or you might think you're here. You're just celebrating and saying like, oh, I don't need AI. Like there's other ways to do things. But like, I promise you, it is coming, and competitors who are using it will be getting value from it. And it takes real work to get value from it. So don't be this guy and falling on your face because you haven't started. Like just take on the tools. You don't have to be at the bleeding edge of it, but you want to be moving your organization into deeper usage of AI on a month by month, year by year basis, because the risk of not doing so is just too severe. When we're thinking about what AI is, I think it's a really tough question, right? Like AI is starting to be used for so many different things. My hypothesis last year was that people will stop talking about AI in products because it's a meaningless thing. It's like, sugar in food. Like it's everywhere, right? Every single technology product has got AI built into it in some format right now. That's not that useful a way to think about it though. So I think about AI is like, I could have put 7 companies on this slide. I focused on 3. There are 3 really big companies who are basically building the brains behind all the AI you see in other places, right? And that's ChatGPT, Gemini, which is Google, and Anthropic Claude. I could have put some other stuff on there. I could have put Grok on there, DeepSeek, Kimi K. There's a few others out there. But essentially, almost all of the core of what is generative AI is being developed by these really big houses. And then what everyone else is doing is building applications on top of that intelligence. So at Smartbuild, for instance, like our developers use Claude a ton. And Claude is winning the enterprise game. So if you looked across Fortune 500 companies, big companies, Claude's winning that market share. Gemini is the fastest growing. ChatGPT has by far the biggest market share because it was first to market, right? So, but if you think about like the way people are using it, our developers and so forth are using Claude every single day. And one in particular is using it in a big way. I always congratulate him every time a new model came out. I'm just like, you just got 30% smarter today. Like these models are getting better, and every time they get better, everybody who's using them gets better. And that's why like it's just not possible to, if you're kind of at a break even right now on productivity using AI versus not using AI, if AI gets 50% better, that break even stops being there. And I think we're already past that point, right? Like I'm wildly more effective throughout my day because I'm using AI constantly through the day. So a lot of the questions, and I can't see questions coming through and it's hard to jump in here, but like one of the questions I always get when we bring up the slide is where to start. And my general kind of advice is if you're already paying for one, stick with it. Just get better at using it. If you're not yet paying for one, I would recommend starting with Gemini. If you're advanced and you're using one and you're starting to do agentic things and you're starting to do coding things and all that stuff, I might recommend Claude Code or Claude. So it doesn't really matter though. If you're at the beginning of this journey, they are all amazing and they're in an arms race to get better faster than each other. And so they keep releasing, and 1 week, I think ChatGPT is the top model for something this week, and Claude will be it again the next week, and then Gemini will be it another week, right? Like, don't worry about that until you're really advancing your use cases and you're thinking about the really finer details like speed, cost, connection to core systems, building APIs, all that sort of stuff. Like if you're thinking about that, it starts to matter. Before then, pick a tool, go with it, get better at it. You don't need the Tour de France bike to kind of ride around the neighborhood.
Rowan, why not just a quick question, because I heard a lot of these questions being asked just at a recent event, and I think I did question come in about some. Do we have recommendation of other industry events coming up? Yeah, we can share that at the end. Absolutely, as part of the deliverables we give to you. But two of the things that I think about is, one, should I pay for this? Yes. Even if you just jumped into, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude, it would take you a very long time, even if you were very sophisticated, to learn how to use it well, to create custom agents, all these things that are very, and just the security alone of just saying, I don't want to share this with the language model. And a security could be a 2-hour presentation in its own that Rowan and I could give. But yes, you should pay for one. I would start with one and really get familiar with it. And the other part of that, and I'm going to pass this to you, Rowan, to maybe speak to, because you deal with it probably on a day-to-day basis, is a lot of people hear what is an open versus closed system? How does that work? What's the difference when it comes to AI? What are we talking about?
Yeah, totally. So when you're using the free version of the product, there is not a way to turn off that it will train on that data. What exactly that means is a bit of a complex topic, but like you just can't turn that off when you're using it for free, because you're the product when it's for free. But as you pay, and normally the entry price is somewhere between $20 and $30 a month, you pay the $20 and $30 a month, and you suddenly get quite a bit more capability. And there will be a toggle in the settings which says, don't train on my data. All of them have it. All of them will put them in slightly different places. When you log in, you can just ask, how do I turn that setting off? And it will take you through. But all of them will have that setting. And as soon as you've set that, you're in a system where, yes, it's going up to the cloud and doing things with it in the cloud, but it's not training on it and it's not accessible to anybody else. So think about it like your email, right? Like your email is not a localized system either. It's off in the cloud. But Microsoft is a very expensive company that would get in an extraordinary amount of trouble if they said they were keeping your data secure and they let you go over all your emails. These guys are worth, in the trillions of dollars. If they said they weren't using your data and then got caught like leaking your contracts out or something like that in a way that people could get it, this would cost their market cap way more than the collective sum of all the money everybody on this call will earn in their entire lives. Right? Like it's just like, it's such an astronomical problem for them that they're really motivated not to do that. And that doesn't mean hackers won't get through and whatever, but like that's true of absolutely anything digital. So I think that that's a problem that people are more scared about because they don't know how to get around it. And you get a really long way by just paying $20 a month and clicking a button in your settings that says, don't train on my data. And that gets through, I'd say, 90% of the fear. The big next step is actually as you get more advanced. So as you get more advanced in AI use and you start connecting multiple systems, you start dealing with APIs, you start dealing with security keys, you start storing lots of data on it, you start being exposed to prompt injection attacks and all that sort of stuff. There is a real area at the advanced end of the spectrum, but you just don't have to worry about it until you're building agents. So maybe that's probably a kind of good segue. In all the people I've talked to, I think that there's kind of like 5 stages I'm describing how to use AI. And in reality, there's probably more past the number 5, but this is a pretty good capture at the beginning. So it's kind of, I think of like level 1, you can do this in the free version. You can do it in the paid version, it would be on a little more powerful models. But this is chatting back and forth with a use case. Like, what should I make with the food in my fridge? How do I answer this question that the GC asked me? Review this document to pull out clauses. That's all kind of the first level of how you can use it. And there's tons of value in that level. And I would actually say, like, still most of my day-to-day use is in that level. But a lot of the assets I've built and so forth sit above that. So the second level is where you're just using the interfaces and you're creating what I'm calling persistent context. And I think you can think about this mentally, like all of those Excel worksheets that you've built with different linkages to different bits of models, and it's, it's a calculator for figuring out estimating and so forth. That's what this persistent context is. you spent time taking a blank Excel sheet that could do anything and putting structure behind it so that it would deliver you a specific outcome without you having to rewrite every single formula that would be required every single time, right? So this is really easy to do. The next step after that is you start connecting it to your data. So you can connect it to your email, to your Teams, to your OneDrive, to your contracting tools and all that sort of stuff. And you start being able to query your sales leads or your business development things or your contracts and things like that. The reason this gets a bit complex is as soon as you're doing that, the security stuff gets a bit more complex. And also, like, it doesn't always work that well. So I typically think about level 3 as a bit of a false level. Everybody I've known has taken a long time to go from level 1 to level 2. And then what will happen is 10% of the people who go to level 2 will go 3, 4, 5 in like a week and over a weekend working late at night because their curiosity takes them, right? But it's partly because 3 is a little bit of a false level. You start doing it and you're like, this is awesome. And then you get 20 minutes into it and you're like, I've run out of credits. I can't do this. It's not actually doing what I want. It's messing up. It's really hard to debug. I can't really deal with it. And then you start getting into level 4, which is you start going to things like N8N, Zapier, and you can start creating automations. And the nice bit here is you're actually starting to use a combination of traditional software and AI. So it connects to my email, it reviews the email, it sorts it by who is more important to me and less important to me. It then uses AI to read the email. It then uses AI to categorize whether it's high, medium, or low, and then it uses traditional software to put it back into my inbox and tell me what I should read. Right? I'm creating systems and architecture with it on a kind of a platform called N8N. And then you start getting to vibe coding. And vibe coding is super fun. Gets complicated. But like in this space, I'm using Claude Code to build APIs into my sales system and so forth, and extracting data out and all that kind of stuff. I just really recommend that people start, if you're at number 1, like if you reflect on the way that you use it today, like, and you're at number 1, invest the time in learning number 2. If you're at number 2 and you're excited about trying new things, play around and experiment above that. But just everybody on this call, I want you to challenge yourself to think, like, what is something I should create persistent context around that I would get value from because I use it again and again? And I'll give a few examples. So,
Hey, Ron,
yeah,
this might be a good spot. I'm going to pop up a quick survey real quick. Well, think about that because it's right on this topic, or a poll, I guess. I'll just post that up. You can keep talking while people answer the poll, but just wanted to interject that in here.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff.
Mhm.
So the sort of things you can do in kind of number 1, and 90% might not be right. It might be 80% now. It's moving around, but you might be drafting RFIs. You could be cleaning up site notes. You could be, drafting scope clarifications, all that sort of stuff. The key here is you're doing it new in a new session every time. If you want to start doing that in a more structured way, I would say, what do I want an RFI to look like? And how do I create the structured prompt that gets me the exact RFI I want? And then I would essentially publish that as a custom GPT, a project or skill, or depends on which platform you're on, but it all means the same thing, really. I'd publish that. And then every time I do an RFI, all I need to do is provide the net new input, and it will just output in that same way. I think this is really useful for an email assistant. I think something I hear all the time when people say, oh, just, it outputs emails for me. Well, but it sounds generic and I don't like the way it works. Well, in level 2, I just told it the way I like to write emails, and I'm super concise, super to the point, professional, but a little bit edgy, reasonably casual in my language but with a professional tone. Like, I just gave it that information. And now when I just blah, blah, blah at my engine, it will spit it back to me in an email the way I write, including, like, I'm not from the US, in case nobody can tell. I use different words in some situations. It will switch out some of the words that I'll use commonly rather than that. And if you want your just company to have a tone of how to speak, just create a tone. And then everyone will speak in that way. Jeff, hopefully you've got the stuff. That was me doing the...
Yeah, good response on the poll results. If everybody's interested at the towards the end, we can share that. But thanks for answering that.
Oh, cool. You have something you're going to share now?
Sure. Let's see. View
I've
results.
got data. I want to see it.
There you go. On the way.
How do I see it?
Should be popping up any second. No.
I see it on my side. It looks like the bare share is we are experimenting. A few people using tools here and there, 66%. That's by far the bulk of the group. And it's kind of a tie between we haven't started yet, a few workflows, and some of the few more advanced peoples of we're already running full steam.
Yeah, 6% of the participants that answered are at the point where they're building custom tools, so they're doing the vibe coding and or have a software team helping with that. So very cool.
That's awesome. And one of the things when we talk about this, and this is actually where Jack and I started talking, right, is the people in the room who ask the most questions are typically the most advanced people. But the people who need help are the people who are just getting started. So like I'm trying to center this presentation around people who are in that 66% or the 11% type things. I'll say things that are useful to those that are beyond. But especially if you're in that 66% to the 11%, like that's who I want to help get to level 1 and level 2. Because it's really, really approachable for you all to get there quickly. And the folks who are out there vibe coding, like as soon as we get into like level 5 use cases and whatever, like those people, the amount of self-learning and so forth, like nobody can sit into a room and teach someone how to vibe code. It's not possible. It's moving so quickly. Jack and I will be doing it in completely different ways. We're all reading different blog articles, looking at different things for different use cases. It gets really fragmented, but everyone can kind of sit around a screen and learn to get to number 1 and 2. So I'll give a couple of examples. Oh, Jack, jump in.
Yeah, real fast. I think some of the people out there might not even really have a grasp of what vibe coding is. And just to kind of give some context into that, most of us, even myself, we live in 1, 2, and 3 for the most part. Automations are great. You get into some fancy stuff, but vibe coding, it's coming fast. And what I'm seeing that is just to give being a somebody who actually makes revenue on coming in and doing some of this stuff for our customers, our prospects that actually want help with AI doing this. It isn't exactly in our best interest to push this, but I'm just saying there's incredible power with vibe coding. It's got limitations on what it is basically somebody coming in and speaking into prompts to try to get a software and AI agent to help them build a basic application, be it tied to estimating, be it a dashboard, but it does something. And what used to cost maybe $50,000, $75,000 to bring an engineering or software development team to do this, you can actually do a pretty impressive job. And where I'm saying that, just so you know, is when you start to dig it, you don't start there. You start with 1 and 2. But as you start to get more familiar with this, there's just no way that somebody's going to know as much about your organization as you do. Your project engineers, you know so much about how things are done. And usually, even though you'll use takeoffs, we're doing job 11, all these things are similar, you have your own flavor to it. And so when you come in, you can actually start talking and just say, hey, I need a dashboard, I need a report, or I need something to help somebody do this, and you can kind of build out something that's pretty cool. That's really, really more powerful than bringing in a third party sometimes to say, hey, this is the vanilla flavor how you do that. So there is a lot of power, and we're seeing it more and more used by people that have really no background in software development. They're just really bright people who spend a lot of time in the first 3 buckets or 4 buckets and have gotten there. And at the very least, yes, does it have integration and security and a lot of other things that true software development probably would need to scale? No, but it gives you a pretty solid platform of like, this is what we do. You've answered, what is the problem I'm trying to resolve? So there's a lot of power with vibe coding, but yeah, ultimately it's just somebody trying to figure out who isn't an expert. It actually was coined by I think one of the founders of Tesla, but just talking into prompts, walking through it over and over until it actually does what you need it to do. So again, really cool things coming, and it changes day to day. But sorry, I'll hand it back to you, Rowan.
No, totally agree. And I think the thing is like when you start getting into those more advanced levels, you should expect the amounts of time experimenting and debugging to go up astronomically. Yeah. And so unless you've built skill in how to do that efficiently, you could easily spend a month creating a solution to a 1-hour problem. And my first versions of stuff in that space, I did spend like a week solving a 1 hour problem, but I was doing it for learning, so it was worth doing. But now I'm starting to get to the point where I spend 3 hours solving a 1 month problem. And so it works, but the learning curve is really steep. But in number 1 and 2, it's just jumping in. And if you don't get the maximum you can out of persistent context, you'll start vibe coding things that didn't need to be. And there was a 10-minute way to do something that you've spent a week debugging. And it's brutal to watch. And I've seen lots and lots of people go through that. And I don't wish it upon anybody unless they're already good enough at doing kind of 1 and 2 and also determined enough to get to the other side of the learning, because it's hard. You're trying to learn to juggle 5 balls. It's but just here's an example. So like, within the first one, if you just like think about a really easy prompt, if you just give it a prompt like write an RFI with rebar spacing being wrong, or you give it a structured prompt, so you're giving it a role, you're giving it context, you're giving it a constraint, you're giving it a task, you're going to get a better outcome, right? So this is the outcome. If you did the kind of lazy prompt, it'll give you a bunch of information, but it's just making it up. It's going to be a little bit waffly, and it's going to be very made up because you haven't directed it towards the specifications it should be looking at, the drawings, the documents, any of that stuff. Like, it's just made up. So like hallucinations are a big problem here. As you start getting into a better quality prompt and you've thought about like where to look at for information, etc., what do you want to do? How do you want to structure the output? You start to get to a pretty good outcome. I'm not going to argue that this is a great prompt, etc., for your particular situation, right? But it's like, okay, description of the issue. We told it to give a request for clarification, etc. So it just gives a better quality output. The challenge is that it takes a lot longer to write a really good intentional prompt than it does a lazy prompt. And you're not going to do that every time. So the trick here is to create persistent context. So I might sometimes spend multiple hours, so I'm jumping back here, I might spend multiple hours trying to get this prompt as good as it could possibly be, right? And I might, iteratively prompt the model where I ask it a first question, it gives me an answer, I'm not totally satisfied by that answer, I ask it again, I ask it again, I ask it again, it ends up 50 pages worth of interactions long, and I'm just going back and forth in a conversation. And then I'll ask it at the end, what prompt could I have given at the beginning to reach this outcome in one go? And that'll give me what I should have put in at the very start, right? It'll tell me how to have prompted it. And that is what should go into persistent context. Because if that's a repeated situation, like get your AI to draft an email in a way that actually sounds like you. And you'll have to correct it so many times and whatever. But at the end of it, you could say, write me a style guide that reflects all of the input I've given you. And, so that you would have got here in one shot. And it will do that. And then you get to being able to get scale from your thinking, right? So the beauty of that is, here's an example from our organization. I want to be able to get to know companies really quickly. And we've spent hours thinking about what the best prompt into ChatGPT could be to brief us on a company in the industry, right? So we've thought about things like the context on our industry, analysis of our products, what our team needs to know, which are things like what is the estimated revenue, how many people are here, what are recent projects you've won, etc. How do we want that presented? And now what my sales team can do is all they have to write into that tool is Paul Anderson, Pennsylvania. And this is redacted, so it's about 3 times as long as this, but it will spit out all of this. So all that person prompted was Paul Anderson, Pennsylvania, and it provided all of this research. And that's where like the quality of the thinking that went into that original prompt can get reused by everybody at 0 effort. And that's what persistent context is. Yeah.
There's a question right on that point. It's right on cue. Someone asked, should you create a prompt library for each specific case, such as RFIs, field change notices, etc.?
What I would argue is use either projects. If you're in ChatGPT, use projects or custom GPTs to create your prompt library, because that's already inside it, and you can share it across different team members. You can give access to certain people, and then they will be able to just, go Paul Anderson, Pennsylvania, or, rebar spacing, or whatever it is that you've set that prompt up around. And it will always start from that same point. It gets really hard managing like a OneNote or OneDrive or Word document or wherever you're going to put that kind of prompt library. You think of projects and custom GPTs like a prompt library, and it's really that easy. In the next session we do on this, we'll actually take through a demo of like how to set one of these up in a useful way for you, but kind of push that into that. And that's when you're getting to that kind of persistent context side, because everyone's always starting from the place that you left off.
A quick expansion on.
Jump in there real fast?
Oh, yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead,
Jeff, please. You're okay.
I was just going to say, depending on the complexity of what you're trying to ask the AI and what results you want from it, you can make, it's called skills or agents that are built specifically for a topic. So if RFIs are very complicated and then you have a specific industry niche that you want to do, you can train the skill or the agent be specific on that. And then, as Rowan said, you can share that amongst others. So you can create a library for each specific topic. If the topics are more generalized, then you can use a less of them. But to answer your question specifically, yes, you can make very specific agents that are geared towards detailed topics.
Just to compound on that, and we don't have to butcher this, but I think it's an important topic. With their both their excellent answers. Remember what AI is. AI, when you get into prompting, there's a progression of your knowledge. So maybe everybody that I know of, including myself, starts off with writing a good prompt just to answer specific questions. Maybe not just in one tool. Maybe you try in a few to see what comes back, right? And that'll give you a little bit of an idea of like, oh wow, because AI is. The difference between AI and software is software requires specific information, right? Excel spreadsheet goes in there. You go and writing something in there that is wrong, you're going to get an error code. You have to have an exact input that's coming in. Well, AI is tricky because it'll give you confident answers. It's filling in the blanks. So when you write in what it does well is it takes a fuzzy input, something that you're not clear about, but it gives you a very confident and precise answer. But it could be a very confident, precise, wrong answer. So the more you put into the actual prompting saying, hey, don't guess, don't fill in the blanks if you don't know. Give me a source. Here's the context to my geography. You start to get in there and get more specific to that. Maybe my role is I'm a project manager for a construction. They start to say, oh, okay, so you play with those prompts, you'll get a much better answer. You gravitate from there to custom GPT. So you don't have to keep doing the same thing over and over. Then you go from there to an agent that's maybe taking that, pushing it to a communication or next, in an email. Lots of things, but it starts off with really getting good at scripting. And if you guys need help with that, reach out to Rowan or myself. We can give you some good scripting instructions, which I think we have plenty of that kind of stuff. Somebody asked, and I'll give back to you, Rowan, earlier, if I go in there and I turn the security off and I tell it not to share my information, will that also give it the inability to not learn from me? No, that's just saying I'm not going to share my personal information so that it can learn for the masses out there. Okay, so it will still learn and get a feel for what you're doing and start to cater its answers accordingly. But that's a good answer. So I'll pass it back to you, Rowan.
The build I just wanted to put on Jeff's side, because I think you both explained it well, but you're explaining slightly different things, and I want people to like pick up the nuance between them. If what you're talking about is one really advanced prompt, that's a custom GPT, a skill, a project, anything like that, a gem if you're in Gemini. If what you do is you need it to take multiple steps, where it's like, do the first step of the RFI, do the research, prepare it to this point, and then take that output and put it into this next tool that does this, and then take that output and plug it into my email system and attach my signature, and then take that email and plug that into my project management tool and keep the record and date them all correctly, that becomes an agent, right? So the difference between what you can do in number 2 and then an agent is whether you need multiple steps in it. And that's the point where I say, like, everybody, I believe, should get to number 2. If some people are going to say, I really want to do something that's multi-step. And that's where I think you start getting into automations, where you want it to take multiple steps. If you want control of it, over it, and like actually control the different steps and the order of the steps and that sort of stuff, then you want to take an automation platform. If you want an agentic one just to kind of figure it out as it goes, that you'll get get more freedom and creativity, but you also have less control, then you might use an agent. And just like the skill level in getting that part right is just much more complicated, because each one of the steps it can go wrong, right? Like if I'm trying to get a, journeyman to do a new task that he's never done before, if I give him one task, he's going to get it right. If I gave him 50 tasks and then said, like, figure it out end on end, the chance of him going wrong at some point in that journey goes up exponentially more, right? And it's the same in the AI. I'm going to go through this really fast just because I know we're behind. I want to make sure, Jack, I give you some time too. As you get into the vibe coding type space, like you can start doing stuff that you just couldn't do before. So one of the things we did in Smartbuild is we built a sales dashboard. That's what that's doing. It's multi-step, right? Like it's taking information out of my HubSpot information. It's been vetted, so it's picking up all the right information that I want it to take. It's creating a dashboard that my sales leader needs on it. And it's doing things like showing me call volume trends over time or times of day, right? And in that case, a time of day one we did looked at what's the best time to call someone and get hold of them. And what that has let me do is coach my sales team on which time zones to call into at different times of the day, right? That's worth 30% more productivity from my sales team. Like really material case, but this was really deep. I was creating secrets. I was using API tokens. I've had to build a, always on computer that hosts this and all that sort of stuff. But you can start doing things you just couldn't do before. And this would have cost thousands of dollars. Like if I'd paid a developer to do all that sort of work, like it would have been in the tens of thousands of dollars to make all the connections and so forth. And it was a plane flight plus a couple of days worth of data verification to get it there. So it's wild what you can do there, but it's not the place to start. Jack, do you want to kind of jump into some of the themes that are on your mind?
Yeah. Real fast, a couple questions coming in on a few things. Copilot, they're asking, hey, I have, I think Monique, you threw out there. Yeah, absolutely. Copilot's a free tool. It's a powerful one. That's definitely a good resource that people are underutilizing because it is part of so many people's stack that they already have. And here's one. This is actually a good question. And maybe you can speak to it, Rowan, as well. But I've been using the paid version of ChatGPT. Is there a way to get Copilot or another maybe model to get my history of those interactions so I have to start fresh?
Yeah, I think I actually just turned Copilot on again yesterday for myself because I was trying to do something. Copilot is built into a lot of the stuff that you have, but is very, very tuned down and controlled relative to just going to ChatGPT. So the great bit about it is it's already in your email. The bad bit about it is the ability to control how it works is way, way less. But as you think about moving models, if you're going from ChatGPT to Claude Code, or if I was going last night from both of those to Copilot, I just asked my ChatGPT, like based on everything you know about me and all of the ways we've ever interacted, can you give a brief to Copilot on how to work successfully with me? And that was my very first thing I put into Copilot, and I put it into the personalization settings of like, how do I like emails written? How do I like answers? Do I want them to do research? Do I want them to, how concise do I want it to be? How much do I want to say like I'm a good person? Because it drives me crazy when it's always just like, oh, great idea. It's like drives me absolutely bonkers. So instead, I just like tell it not to do that, and it will immediately be more personalized for me. Now, there's limits on that, right? Like it's not, Copilot itself is more constrained on how well it can get to know me than ChatGPT or Claude. But that's got it to kind of like halfway there in 10 minutes, is just asking from the tool that you've spent the most time, brief the other tool on how to work with me.
No, that's great. I mean, and that's you'll find that as you get into as you start to get maybe a little more into power user stuff with even with Claude, you're going to run into the joy of tokens and running out of space very quickly as you get more advanced. You put an RFI in there and you're looking to take that and maybe put some estimation numbers. And get all of a sudden, bam, you run out of space. So going in there and just saying, can you give me a prompt for a continuation of this chat? that allows me to continue on a new. So you're actually saving some tokens and it can continue so you can add assets to it. It'll give you a prompt and a full breakdown so that you don't have to start from the ground up on the next chat. So there are ways to go about that. Jumping into these next few slides, we're coming up on it, guys. We're already about 11, a little after 11:45. I want to leave enough time for Q&A, which I think is the meat of this, the value of this. And by the way, we're learning as we go here. So I think the next session we do, which will be a workshop, we're going to open up, I think, and we'll talk about this more live Q&A so that people can actually see the questions come in and ask live. But we want this to be interactive as well. But a lot of information here to throw at you. Really, these next three slides speak to infrastructure. The best way to put this is, as I speak to these next three slides, I spoke with a large contractor. Actually, I was at an event where they had a round table. We were doing a workshop, and we were talking about takeoffs and AI in takeoffs. And it was fascinating to hear that of three of the people at this table, like 7 or 8, had the same takeoff AI software. Okay, different general contractors. Doing different things, all of which are good sizes. And one was like, well, how long does it take you when you go in there and you upload those plans and you actually run these tools? How long does it take you to actually generate that before you can go to the next step? One was 2 minutes. Another one came back and said, you got to kid me. It takes us 15 to 17 minutes. We usually just start it and walk away. And sometimes it crashes out. And another one was somewhere in the middle of that. It's like same tool, same, the workflow wasn't that different. Where it sits on is astronomical. So if you imagine, if you take something and just, doing a full takeoff on a hallway can manually go through there is very, very painful. It could take you 6 hours in itself, as probably a lot of you know if you've gone into that. But you're using an AI tool thinking, hey, it's going to crank this out. Well, every time you do it, it's taking 15 to 20 minutes and it's using all the juice on your computer. You got to walk away. Well, that's not exactly the throughput you thought. So that's where it gets to where the foundation is important. Okay. And so one of the companies had said, Jack, we vibe coded some of the stuff that Rowan was talking about, and we allotted a year for that to get the dashboards and to get some of our estimating and our job 11, all this stuff working. We had something working in 6 weeks that we were happy with. It took us 5 years to get the data cleansed to actually where that could actually work and it would be effective. So the whole point of this is the meat of this is the infrastructure. It is going in there and getting the data ready. And on that, the tools are ready. The sophistication is out there with the AI. The real issue, especially in construction, is most of you have been behind the times. You're not up to speed. You're basing this on the fact that you have a foundation with your data that's clean, that it's in what you have tons of data, but it is the Wild West. It's everywhere. And then the infrastructure, your technology, how's your bandwidth? Is it even backed up? One of the things they said was the reason why that AI takeoff AI tool wasn't working is you had different versions of it on different computers all over the field on different places that were connecting. So that versioning was causing chaos. So, you got to get all your ducks in a row and standardize if you really want to leverage this stuff. So why would you pour money into the technology and the tools, as often we do, and then park them because you don't have the foundation right? So again, I can't tell you that is where a lot of this is going to come, and it just gets ignored. And then you get the tool doesn't do what it's supposed to. Not because the tool isn't effective, it's because you haven't done the due diligence to put it on a foundation that works for that tool. So actually, can we jump the page to the next one, whoever's driving this one right at this point? Before the AI, 3 things need to be in place: clean data, secure cloud, reliable connectivity. I'd say clean data. You need to do this. This is brutal. Most people have all their files, their cost codes, all of it is it's madness. And the only one that's really going to be able to clean it, there's no AI that's going to do this all for you. Honestly, it'll help you, but you're going to have to sit down and figure out, all right, how do we name these files? What's the structure? Where's it going to go? And what's the access? People who need it, can the right people in the right roles get access to the data you put out there? If you put in there a random naming convention, a structure where projects live with bids, live with, just any other data, it's all there. The AI can't go in there and really utilize that information effectively. It'll take half its time trying to find it. Okay, so the secure cloud portion of that, I say cloud, but really hybrid environments where you have servers on-prem, whatever that is, you need to get all that working. You know, your security, your multi-factor authentication, your backup, just your IT 101, because now you're starting to really leverage your operation into the technology. When you start to invest in this sort of thing, so you better make sure it's secure. You better make sure that it runs smoothly. If you are going to the cloud and you're using, you know, any of these multitude of tools that are pulling this, especially on multiple sites and people going out on job sites, they need access to it. It needs to be running cleanly. Most people that we deal with tolerate it. That's good enough. You know, it hasn't blown up. You know, it seems to function as good as it can. You're going to find that the AI has no chance in those situations, and these tools that are really making a difference. So again, reliable connectivity, off-field, field mobile, but that cleansing of the data, you're going to need 6 months to sit down and really figure out, how do we organize this data? What is the important data? Is it just pictures of plans, or is it actually true digital files? Because if it's pictures, I'll tell you what, the AI has a 51% visual rate of accurately assessing that information. So when it does, you know, you're doing takeoffs and it's looking at doors, it's looking at all these specific symbols in there, and it's a picture, you're going to get a 50% rate of accuracy in there, which is going to give you false data. If you take the time to go in there and actually create these files digitally, label them correctly, give it naming conventions that make sense, and now you have a sustainable, again, it's always going to need to be managed, but it's much more successful. You can leverage the tools on top of that. Plus, you'll know what's going on. So again, that's where the power is. We can jump to the next one here. Just a couple.
Hey, Jack, let's not,
Yeah,
just keep
let's move
forward
on.
on this one so we can
Yeah.
get to some questions. There are some good questions out there. I want to make sure we get time to answer them.
Okay. Did you have another poll question you want to throw out there, or no?
There is, but in lieu of time, I think we should carry on.
Okay.
We can address the exact
What
question.
These are some questions that came in beforehand. We got a few questions. Again, we will answer all the questions that come across. We'll get those answers to you, so they're not going to be left out there. What does AI actually cost smaller companies? Quick answer from me. It's resources. It's time for the most part. You heard $20 for a couple of these tools to get familiar with it, to get in there. Yes, it can get much. Most of it starts with getting the data cleansed and the foundation of your IT, but the actual tool sets, I don't think those are the actual cost prohibitive things. It's really the time that you're going to put into it. What do you think, Rowan?
I think there's a bit of a buy-in. So initially, I think you got to spend $25 per person per month on getting them access to those kind of first layer of tools. Especially everybody who's in an office job, for sure. Everyone there should have a tool, and it's probably going to cost you $30 a month. Once you do that, some of the people are going to start getting more advanced. So as they get more advanced, you're going to get more ROI on their time, but they're going to start costing more. So I cost probably about $300 a month worth of AI tools. But in terms of the amount of time that we're saving and getting from me there, it is a complete no-brainer, right? And as a total company, including our developers and all that, we're probably spending $25,000 a year on AI tools. But we're getting entire developers worth of value from that, and we're multiplying all of our salespeople and all that sort of stuff. But to get off the beginning of the starting box where you have people learning at the right rate, I think $25 a month. And the other thought for you is, if you're not spending that, people are going to be bringing their own tools to the job, and then you're going to have a real security risk. Like, if you're not giving someone a tool that can do the job, they're going to use it regardless of what your policy is.
Hey, Ron, I have another question for you. I'll just add a real quick comment on that one, because someone else asked a similar question of where to start, how to get my team to start. And Rowan mentioned your team's going to start, and probably already are, using tools without your knowledge for part of their job. Start with an AI usage policy for your team that defines which tools that you use. Get with your IT team. We can help answer that question. Which AI tools you want to use, what's appropriate to put in them, what's not. That's a good basis. And then you can start with the levels of experience. Start with level 1 and have it help you compose some emails, summarize some data, and then you start to get comfortable with it, and you start to advance the use over the channel that Rowan had shared. Someone asked, I wanted to get this question out there, how is AI impacting the estimating side of contracting, in your opinion?
I think in estimating, it's a very well-suited problem to AI. But it's a mega specific problem with big high stakes if you get it wrong as well. So that's the sort of case where you either want to go super deep down the rabbit hole on developing something with automations and multi-step stuff and deep research and verification steps and testing steps around it and so forth, or buy a tool with someone who's thought really deeply about it. Like, I think that, yeah, takeoffs, estimation, some of that stuff are really proposals are really well suited to someone who has spent 6 months designing the perfect tool for it, and then you just use it. It's not a general ChatGPT use case. Unless you want to go really deep down the rabbit hole and figure it out, and kudos to you.
There are people that are leveraging, it's good in that AI does a great job of taking large amounts of data, helping you filter it, look for patterns in there and putting it in there. But estimating, as you can, as everybody here knows, you can't miss by much. So you're going to have to audit that information very, very tightly. But again, can it take a 3 to 4 hour process and trim that painful process up front? Yeah, it can. And that actually goes into that second question there. Does AI replace human judgment or just take the credit? It's a good question. It's kind of backwards. A lot of people we see have trouble adopting it and really buying into it because of the trust factor. Somebody who does, and this question came from, we've heard it from people that come and actually have adopted it, who are doing their due diligence of using it to do the minutia of work that takes time intensive, but then using their judgment to actually use that towards an end. And what if the culture of my company though is just saying, you're just AIing that? The results it's a tool. AI is a tool, just so you know. Be as transparent as possible. You'll probably be seen as an advocate for it and asked to share that information. And the more you do it, because most people won't take that. They just won't, even though it will save them time, they won't put the time into creating good scripting, good processes. So if you do that, you're ahead of the game and you're going to be seen as an asset. Nobody's going to say, because you use a jackhammer, that it's doing all the work. No, this is just taking some of the monotony out of it. But again, I think the culture is, if you're seen as somebody who's leveraging this, you're going to be so much more effective at what you do. I think that the worst of it is you're going to probably be asked to share a lot of information with everybody. So that last question, or that question on Claude and Cowork, you want to run with that, Rowan?
Yeah. So at its basic, Claude Chat does the same thing as ChatGPT. Cowork is something. Cowork is just integrated into Microsoft, so it does it. As you get a little more advanced in Claude, you start getting into Claude Cowork and Claude Design and Claude other things. Then you start getting really differentiated tools that are specific and take you a lot further. But these are in the kind of, as you get into level 3, 4, and 5 type structures where it starts to be differentiated. Until you get past like creating persistent context, just don't worry about that stuff. It's not worth thinking about. And way too many people spend way too much time jumping from model to model because it was the smartest model that came out last week.
Got it. How are teams using AI across the full workday? You name it, pre-construction, to people out in the field. They're really, and just to communication. I'd say communication is a big part of that. Just going in there, summarizing plans up, summarizing meetings, getting a toolbox summary that they can send out. Lots of different ways. I think you just have to be careful about having some policy in place so that everybody isn't just doing it on their own. I think some acceptable use policies need to be put in place. But what do you think, Rowan, on this one?
I think anytime someone's thinking about a problem that they could train somebody else to do, they should be using AI to do that. But it's going to take time. It'll depend on the person. I think for me, I'm probably using it almost every single hour that I'm not talking to someone on the phone. It's drastically accelerating what I'm doing. And I think there'll be people in that camp. Other people won't. And if you're at the camp where you're like, I don't really get what it's for, the challenge to you is like, pick one thing which you do repeatedly that you would be able to train somebody else if you had an executive assistant to do it, or if you had a new project manager or whatever. Pick something like that and spend like a couple of hours trying to get AI to give you the best answer possible. And then put that into a repeatable process for yourself, whether it's a custom GPT or a prompt library or anything like that. And just start there, and it will start snowballing really, really fast. But you have to get kind of past that hump of investing enough time up front to do something that was a little bit difficult. Because if you're trying to just like ask it a question and hope to get the right answer every time, first time, it's not realistic.
That's the perfect transition. And I want to be clear, everybody, I apologize, we're running out of time. We're gonna put together all the questions that were asked here, along with some of the great questions that came in on our registration forms, and we're gonna put together a nice resource that answers those a little more cleanly. We're gonna be sending those out, so you will get those. We're gonna try to make this a little more interactive with the next session. And what Rowan is saying is, I'd like to invite everybody, because we're up on the hour, to jump into this is our contact information, Rowan's and mine. If you go back to that page, Jeff, or Ron, this is if you want to ever schedule time with us to talk to any of us individually, take a picture of the QR code. That's if you want to get us. You might want to take a picture of our emails. If you have questions specific to us, we're always available. Go to the next page. This is session 2. If you do have some of those use cases that you'd say, you know what, I'd love you guys to help me create some kind of agent, something that does this, whatever, we're going to use that for the next session, which is going to be taking place on June 11th at 11 a.m., about a month from now. We're going to reach out to whoever we wants to raise their hand for this and tell us, hey, I'd like you to help me build this. And we're going to take you through it live. And again, we'll have everybody open so people can ask questions about it. We might even parlay that into a third session where we do it again. But again, what we want to do is show you a real live situation where we can take something that's causing pain or frustration in your organization and create a workflow for it. Rowan has done this before. It's a fantastic interface that will share out with everybody, so you can take that information, utilize it, or tweak it to your own company. But the way I will figure we'll do this is everybody's registered for this. We'll keep you registered for the next one. You can always cancel out of it, but that way at least you could get the recording. But when you go to this registration, it'll ask you some questions on there about, optionally, would you like to sign up for this? Would you like to go in there and put your issue? Take a couple days, but we need to get this done by next Friday because the clock is ticking. We're gonna have to reach out to somebody to get this going. So again, if you want us to help you build something free or just our time, then let us know, and we'll do that. Rowan, did you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I hope someone comes forward with a fun use case. I'd love to just spend some time nerding out on it.
They do a great job. It absolutely would be. It's kind of gold to take advantage of something like this. It'll show you a little bit of what's going on, and I think it'll be fun for everybody who comes back to actually see what that looks like with one of your peers. Again, we'll take more questions, but again, respectful of everybody's time. Thank you again. Thank you for the ABA for doing this. Thank you for Rowan. Hopefully, you got some value out of it, and we'll be back.
Yep. Thanks,
Very
everyone.
good. Thanks, everybody.